How are you? Good.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being here. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, Wednesday, March 20th, the first day of spring, 2 p.m. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Houston?
I'm here.
Comptroller Green?
Here.
President Reed?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Items presented for the first time. 19.059, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of contracts and leases for various city departments as listed on Exhibit A. Number 2, 19.060, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of intra-departmental and interdepartmental transfers from various city departments as listed on Exhibit B. Number 3, 19.061, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of transfers between projects for capital improvement funds listed on Exhibit C. Number 4, 19.062, request from the Director of Airports for approval of Board Bill 191. This ordinance authorizes the transfer of $13,729,769 from the airport's debt service stabilization fund to the airport revenue fund to make funds available to mitigate rates in FY 2019 in accordance with the 5-year airport use and lease agreement that commenced on July 1, 2016. Did I read that amount right? Just for the record, it's $13,727,769. I think I goofed that up the first time. Number 5, 19.063, request from the Director of Streets, the Director of IT, the Commissioner of Traffic for approval to move one traffic engineering manager from the Traffic Division to the Information Technology Services Agency table of organization. Number 6, 19.064, request from the Director of Personnel for approval to add one Program Specialist 1 to their table of organization. Number 7, 19.065, request from the Comptroller's Office for approval of the city's long-range financial plan. I would be happy to have a motion for 1 through 6. Do we want to, you're going to make a presentation on the...
If you would like.
Okay, that'd be fine. I anticipated that. So if we could have a,
Yeah,
if we're so inclined, 1 through 6.
okay. I move for adoption of items 1 through 6 as printed.
Second.
All in favor of adopting items 1 through 6?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And at the pleasure of the mayor, I'd ask that we would have a presentation of the city's long-range plan. And with us today, we have folks from PFM. Would you like to come up and kind of make a presentation for us? Short and sweet,
I'm going to step out for 1 second to get my copy.
executive summary type presentation. A brief- I guess we'll call for approval after that. Is that the contract you brought?
Hi. You guys want to introduce yourselves, maybe?
Sure. So I'm Rebecca Perry Glickstein with Public Financial Management Financial Advisory Group. This is my colleague, Mike Nadal, who is the Managing Director in our Budget and Management and Budget Consulting Group. Hold on. And we are here today, Mike, principally just to give you an overview of the update to long-range financial plan that was originally done in 2015. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike and proceed.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to support the city with this update to the long-range financial plan. This type of exercise, multi-year financial planning, is a recognized best practice for local governments, recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association and the rating agencies, because it can give you a better sense of the long-term structural challenges that you face financially and what some of the opportunities may be to head off those challenges and put yourselves on a better trajectory. As Rebecca said, we had the opportunity to work with you several years ago, building on, I think, the city's first plan, which the comptroller initiated in 1999. So St. Louis has long been a practitioner of this best practice. In terms of what we found with this update, I want to note right up front that there has been some important and significant progress along many of the key dimensions of the city's fiscal sustainability. Underlying everything is the economic health and direction of the city itself, and with some of the progress that has been made in revitalizing downtown and the neighborhoods and securing the NGA investment and so on, that's moving on a positive direction. In terms of the costs of government, there's been some meaningful progress with employee health benefits reforms through contract rebids and creative health management measures. There's been the renewed capital investment of some of your recent bond issuances to sustain the city's infrastructure and address some longstanding needs. And among these other different pillars of the city's fiscal health, improving revenues and ensuring that there's sufficient revenue growth to keep up with ongoing costs is a central challenge, and one that, since we were here doing this exercise just 4 years ago, the city's made some significant headway on addressing rising costs for sanitation services by updating that fee and adopting the 2.5-cent sales taxes to address other important community needs, have really helped put the city in a better position than where it was. And I think that's exemplified most clearly with the rebuilding of the city's reserves, which dipped below your targeted levels in the wake of the Great Recession, and have now begun to climb back, and with the actions being taken this year, are projected to regain and even slightly exceed that 5% targeted level for reserves. And that's always important. It's a critical best practice to be prepared for contingencies, and again, something the rating agencies value as well. But I think we would observe that it's particularly important at this stage of the business cycle. We're in our 10th year of an expansion phase for the economy since the recession bottomed out. We're hopeful that that will continue for some additional number of years, but we're already within several months. We're 117 months into this expansion phase. The record in the post-war era is 120 months. So we're already on the brink of exceeding really anything we've lived through in terms of the duration of this expansion. And while that doesn't in and of itself foretell a downturn, it gives you concern that it's important to be ready. And with a better, healthier level of reserves, particularly at this juncture, achieving that as you have, maintaining it as I know you all are focused on doing is a really significant accomplishment that this plan that we shared with you reflects. What we also included in the plan are 2 scenarios looking forward, not just taking stock of the progress made since we were here last. We worked very closely with the budget director to develop models that line item by line item forecast how your revenues and expenditures would carry forward with current services if nothing significant changed, a kind of a base case scenario. And we did a second evaluation that we would characterize as more of a stress test. What if you had a downturn in the next couple of years, and how would that affect your budget? And I think it's fair to say, from doing this kind of work around the country, that there's a mix of good news and bad news in the story. The good news is that we aren't foreseeing a significant or unmanageable crisis, but the challenge is that we are seeing structural pressures that are really very consistent with what we see in most cities around the nation. Generally speaking, and this is certainly the case for you, revenues, for the most part, bump along, keeping pace with the economy. Your earnings tax will grow if people have employment and rising wages, property taxes eventually kind of move along with economic growth. But most governments nationally, and we talk about some of the general trends, and St. Louis in particular, face cost pressures that often exceed that kind of economic growth, particularly employee health benefits because of medical inflation, and just some of the ongoing service demands that you have. And even in your base case scenario, we see that natural revenue growth with no action, no corrective action, would be a little below 2%. Natural spending growth would be a little bit higher. It's not an insurmountable gap, but year over year there is this recurring challenge that we know you all wrestle with on an annual basis of bringing that back into line. I guess one other little bit of good news, if you can call it that, is that St. Louis does not experience as much volatility with its revenues as some of the other places we work with around the country in the event of downturns. At least historically it hasn't. There would be greater pressure. But what we see in a base case scenario is a very modest budget pressure beginning to open up over the next several years and widening on a 10-year basis to a more significant kind of $45 billion gap if you go out 10 years. But if you look at that trajectory, that is something that's important to recognize and square up to, but should be manageable. In the event of a downturn in the near term, that opens up more quickly and grows wider. But again, it's compared to some places, challenges that with the right kind of continued action along the lines that you've been undertaking in the last several years in particular, you should be able to make continued headway against. And that's wise economic investment. That's continued capital investment as good stewards of the city's infrastructure and capital needs. It's an ongoing sharp focus on cost-effective government and some of the same kinds of benefits categories that just inherently, without continued work, will kind of push away at your budgetary stability. And it is revenues. Without periodic action to evaluate some of the revenue categories you have in the way you did with the sanitation fees and the rising costs of service that hadn't been caught up with for many years, without the kind of creativity and leadership that was demonstrated to create some new revenue sources, the city's capacity is going to be challenged unless and until there's an even greater kind of period of economic growth. So the report, with the help of the budget director and his team, kind of maps out those different scenarios, some of the strategic dimensions that underlie that, and also include some updates to some of the city's debt policy thinking and related issues that are just part of good financial management generally.
And on the debt policy side, just as we move forward and start addressing capital needs and the funding of them, the importance of kind of maintaining the integrity of the policies as prudent debt management and to foster continued fiscal health and strength and some continuity and really restraint, for lack of a better word, that the rating agencies are looking to see as you decide on limited resources. Where are you going to spend those limited resources, and what are they going to give you in return? So we did want to emphasize that in the plan, and I would just, from my position as a municipal advisor and having worked with the city for quite some time and been through the ups and downs of the rating process, I'm so happy to see where the general fund reserves are now on a cash basis, and we'll continue to nip and bite in the ear of keep going, keep going, keep going. 5% is the minimum. I think for a city the size of St. Louis, you don't necessarily need to have huge whopping reserves that you would if you were smaller and more vulnerable. But I think we have a little ways to go. And the fact that now that replenishment is being budgeted for, that is huge from a rating standpoint. So I just want to really emphasize that and say, well done, and let's keep going.
Any questions? Comments?
No, thank you. Is this, will this document be posted online?
Of course,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
yeah.
So I guess at this time, I would move for approval. Item 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move
Thank
for-
you. You ready?
Yeah. I move to adjourn this session of the Board of E&A.
Second?
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
We're adjourned.